Coaching as Benevolence, a podcast for people who are curious about using coaching for self-development. I'm Eryn with Roots and Wings Grief and Loss Coaching.
And I'm Shawn with Michelle Sage Place Positive Intelligence Coaching. Today we are looking at the last prompt in section 2 of our guided journal. If you've been following us, we have been reading and going through our guided journal, Coaching Nuggets of Wisdom to Inspire, Explore, Act, Flourish, a guided journal to live your best life. And we went through Inspire, and we are going through Explore, and we'll be finishing Explore today with the final prompt. I am going to read the prompt and then say a little bit about what's coming up for me. And in that organic conversational style that we have in this podcast, we'll just talk back and forth about what comes up for us, and we'll end our conversation with a call to action. All right, so I'm going to read the prompt. Float. Sometimes all we have to do is float, and something will start to shift. Close your eyes and imagine you are floating in a large open sea. Do you feel at peace, a bit lost, inspired, unsettled? Something else? What do you notice when you relax into the water and float with ease? What does that feel like for you? After some time, you end up in a different place, unknown and new to you. You let life lead you here. What does that feel like for you? How would you describe your way of being, who you are at your core, as you navigate where life took you to this new place? This prompt resonates on so many levels. I feel like life has taken me to a new place, and the idea of just floating and allowing it to take me it's a very new idea for me now. And it happened when I was listening to a YouTube short, and it was quite recently. I mean, I think it was like yesterday or something, but I feel like everything that's been going on in my life up to that point, when I heard the little snippet of it, had to do with, and this is what's really interesting about this. It was a YouTube short that came up, and it was about a person who channels a non-physical being called Bashar. And the person was channeling Bashar, this non-physical being. And the person who was asking the non-physical being asked the question, what do I need? Or what is everything that I need, or something along those lines. And the answer that Bashar said was, you have many things in front of you, many paths, many choices, and you should choose what excites you and follow that to its natural end. Follow that, and then something else comes up. Whatever excites you, grab it and go. And as I was listening to this, it is very similar to the floating, because if you think about like you're floating along, you have all these different ways that life can take you. And then one way that you can maybe take ownership or exercise your agency in this life where there are so many things that are outside of our control, very much like floating and shifting with the current. We can make the decision to go with what excites us and take it to its, I don't have the words, to its natural end, I would say. Just let it take you. And one of the things that really like sparked something in me. And I was like, okay, let me look at my life and see what excites me. And what am I doing to pursue those things that excite me? And the two things that came up for me were this new, what should I say? This new activity that I have taken on through this organization that I am. The Family Learning Center is a member organization of this consortium of other civic organizations called Coloradans for the Common Good. And it really just sparked my interest and made me really excited to be co-facilitating these civic academies. And I just love it. And I'm like, I really want to just take it to however, take it to just go through to its natural end, I would say. And I'm just really excited about getting involved. I never thought in a million years, because I don't see myself as a political animal. Do not like politics. And I don't see myself as being political, but it's a reframe of what it means to be political. And it just aligns so well with what I'm passionate about. And the second thing that is just really ignited a fire in me is family constellations. I am so excited to be facilitating constellations, to be in the field as much as possible. And I just really want to, every time I have a conversation with someone, I'm like, you got to constellate on that,
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, we could constellate on that. And I'm like, and I feel like coming across, again, I want to go back to this metaphor of floating. Coming across that YouTube short wasn't a plan. I was not searching for it. And it wasn't like when I was just, taking some time unplugging at a really long day. And I was just like, yeah, let's just see what's on the YouTube shorts. And this comes up and it's like, this is what you need to know. This is the only thing you need to know. Everything you need to know about life and making, life fulfilling is follow what excites you. And I was like, wow, there's two things that excite me that I can follow and see what comes of it. So I'm really excited. So that's a different way of looking at this, because often if you're floating and you don't know where you're going and you kind of, that's not something you have control over. Going back to those questions, do you feel at peace, a bit lost, inspired, unsettled, something else? So there's so many emotions that can come up when you're floating in a large open sea, which scares me. The idea scares me. But if you see it as a metaphor of your life, and I'm looking at, that by chance coming across that little snippet of what Bashar said, and how random is that? Not really random, but it was just, it's like everything's coming together. And I'm beginning to let things go. And I'm like, hey, you know what? I can move with this. I as long as I'm following what excites me and really just putting my energy in that and then just taking everything else in stride, I think I can make it. Eryn, what's coming up for you?
I love the joy and adventure in your voice, especially when you were able to pinpoint to from floating that family constellations and the civic discourse, these two things that are going on in your life right now are leading you somewhere, right? And you are engaging with them wholeheartedly because you are finding a lot of meaning and purpose in them. So I loved hearing about those. And when you were reading the prompt, I did the prompt as my own visualization, which was really nice because I could just listen to you and then go through it just as if it was a guided visualization, like in coaching. This would be an example of maybe a good one to try. I could feel this time when I was at sea, this kind of rocking back and forth like this. And so I tried to root into, oh gosh, I use that again. But what is this? What is this sharing with me? And the word that came up to my mind was cradle and cradling. There was a sense of being held. And that is very different than when I've closed my eyes and done something similar with this guided visualization, or when I've, floated in my mind in a large open sea, or even just floated in my mind in a swimming pool or wherever that may be. So I thought that was interesting. So I need to interrogate that and understand that as like the reciprocity of being held and being seen, and also opening up to that. So that I think is one thing. And then it was interesting because as you went on, and it's like you end up in a place unknown, somewhere different. And for me, I was, I think kind of fighting myself, like, oh, I don't want to end up in that typical island or whatever. But I did. I landed on this island, and then I go up this escalator. And at that point, I'm like surrounded by more um, I would say not quite industrial, kind of newer skyscrapers and structures. So that was really interesting. Like, what is that visualization coming to mind? Why is that showing up here? And then that question of, what does that feel like for you? And so now that I went from a drastically different place at sea to this kind of very urban thing of an experience, I was like, oh, well, maybe there is something that I'm feeling about this. It's getting me excited about this type of an environment. And so that idea of really rooting into how I was feeling, I was in the visualization feeling quite grounded and quite at peace, which, I don't think I would have been a couple years ago or in this maybe another day. So that's something also for me to consider because I know for myself when I've gone through a visualization like this, it's not always joyful, right? There might be more pain or heartache associated with it. But for me right now, it did feel like just being in my own right now. And that feels good. And I think we hear that sometimes for women in particular that, moving into later stages of life, we might have more access to authenticity in different ways or whatever it may be. And who knows what that means. Those are some of the reflections that I had with this prompt and with you reading this. And I just see how this could be used in a coaching session as a visualization for anyone, whether that's related to grief or to career shifts or to life transitions or so many of the different factors. I find that this prompt opened me up to a level of open-heartedness and playfulness, which goes back to what you talked about with Bashar, like choose what excites you. There's a lot of that kind of bubbling up this evening.
Yeah, I love the imagery that you brought into this, like the floating, getting to an island, and the kind of resistance of the cliche of finding an island. And then going with it, going up that escalator, which is so interesting because I wouldn't have imagined an escalator in an island. Because often when we think island, we think deserted island, we think, rough and, very wild and needing to like build a lean-to or something, so it doesn't lend itself, or it doesn't lend itself to an escalator. And then not only do you have an escalator, but the escalator leads you to like a modern city with skyscrapers. And again, unexpected because wait, this is an island. So I love how even though you were like resistant to the cliche of the island, it yielded itself to such unexpected and delightfully surprising images. And I love that. I love the juxtaposition between like the kind of raw, untamed, natural state that you would think an island would be in if you were like floating in the open sea and you end up in an island, you would imagine that it was a deserted island or, you know, a untamed island, and then you get this escalator, and then you get these skyscrapers. So again, that's there's so much in that image. And I love how you mentioned the idea of support. I'm going to go back to that first reaction or feeling that you felt when you were in the visualization and you experienced something you didn't experience before, which is the feeling of being supported. And that to me is really interesting as well, because you have the idea of being in a vast sea or body of water, floating, allowing it to take you wherever it's going to take you, and it takes you to a new place. And there's this feeling of support. And there's so much to explore there. And not only that, the fact that you compared how you would normally respond to, or how you historically respond to such a visualization. And then what does that say about where you are now, Eryn? And if we look at what this section is about, exploring our way of being, and that brings me to back to the prompt with that question towards the end. And it's like the last question. How would you describe your way of being, who you are at your core as you navigate where life took you to this new place? And so that is what my question is when I was listening to you, Eryn. I'm going to bring that question to you. And you probably answered this question because I have a feeling that I get like kind of wrapped up in little things, and you may have already answered this question, but repetition is good. Reiteration, repetition is good. I want to ask you that question. How would you describe your way of being, who you are at your core, as you navigate where life took you to this new place?
Yeah, I love that question because I realized myself in this kind of puzzle of I
Mhm.
wanted to direct the scenario. So, like, my way of being is I'm someone who wants to be in control, right? But on the other end of that, where I started the scenario in the water, I was perfectly okay with that water cradling me and having that relationship with it to where it was in control. And so it's interesting because I could see maybe there is, and historically, there's been a big shift in my own life and how I view control and how I often do now open myself up to the mysteries of the universe as much as I can and be okay with not having a sense of control in certain ways. And I still kind of go back and forth with that. But I will say that in reflecting on this visualization and me saying, like, oh, I don't want an island, but look where the island led me, right? To this new city. And the scenario, the universe, whatever is going on mystically, mysteriously, knows more than I do. And it led me somewhere that was very different than the island. Like, I was making this assumption at first, like, oh, I know better, or like, you shouldn't send me here. And then as a matter of fact, that's where I'm at and in this visualization. And it feels so real to talk about it right now and reflect on it in this way, because I do think there's so much to the mystery with these experiences. And I believe in a lot of science, right? And science is in adhering to scientific methods and those sorts of ways of thinking and inquiring about the world are paramount, right? But I also hold with that like this mystery and spirituality perspective. And I think that's where spirituality comes in to meet the science, in that it's looking at kind of my values and the way I see the world in a way that science can't do that. And so for me to say I'm going to let go of something and let God lead me or let the universe lead me or whatever it may be, I believe that is a better approach in my life than what my brain would tell me to do in the past. I used to follow my brain, my brain, and it would say, you have to, and obviously this is all lived up with like tied up in societal expectations too, right? You have to do this, then you have to do this, and then you have to do this. And I just had this stair step mentality, right? And I think that that approach can only take an individual so far. And I was at the helm of that approach. I'm now much happier not using that approach. Who knows what that will look like into the future, but there's just a level of freedom that seems like it seems strange, right? Because how can we have more freedom if we're, not in control, those types of questions. But there is, for me personally, just more of a sense of freedom. So I think this is where this prompt really took me in my own reflection.
Yeah, there's so much there. Um, Man, I mean, first, I want to like share an observation with you. May I share an observation with you?
Of course.
And you did go back to it, but I just remember when you were talking about control and how you're like at your core somebody who needs or wants control. And then you circled back to feeling supported and being okay with the current taking you and being in control, the water being in control. So the one observation I had about that was that there was the resistance to the island, and like you didn't want to go to the island because that's so cliche, right? Not an island. But you were willing to go with it. It wasn't like you were like, no, no island, we're gonna float a little bit more or something, or you were able to allow the possibility of this being more than just an island, or just being okay with the fact that your new place is an island. And then you were then able to get past that resistance of not wanting an island and wanting something else, and then getting to a place where you were going on the escalator. And then the other thing that was really interesting is that you mentioned it in terms of you being in control, which was really interesting because then you said that was kind of your thinking that, I know what's best, I know what I should have, but that then it was this escalator that led you to this modern city. That was an example of how the universe was bigger and knows more than you, and that following the mysterious, following that unknown led you to something more than like you could create. And of course, I'm paraphrasing. I don't want to put words in your mouth. So I want to go back to that, Eryn, and see if when you said, so I'm kind of want clarification. So was the escalator and the city, was that you with like lucid dreaming, so to speak? Was that you? Did you put the escalator there, or was the escalator there as like a surprise? Like what was because when you were talking about it,
Yeah.
you're like, this is someone who wants control, and that like by putting the escalator, like almost like the escalator and the city was like your artifice, and it wasn't like a surprise from the island. I want to go back to that just for
Mhm.
clarification.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that. I think it came from me in that in other visualizations,
Mm-hmm.
not this one, there's been like escalator motifs or like stair motifs.
Uh-huh.
And it was maybe just like going into like that part of my brain and saying, okay, we're going to do the escalator here just so that you can, because like eventually
Oh,
one visualization in coaching is you help your client go above, go up the stairs and get a bird's eye view of what's above versus
yeah.
taking them on a path through the forest, right? Like that's kind
Okay.
of what the differences between coaching and consulting or something. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that lifting up is in my brain. Yeah.
Okay. So was that like a response to the resistance to the island? So you were like, okay, well, instead of
Oh.
going into the island, we'll go up an escalator. So you're kind of co-creating the experience with the mysterious by kind of inserting your own
Yeah, you're like,
little
it's not that
coaching.
mysterious. It's
Co-
still your brain, Aaron. It's
But I'll tell you this, and this could just be me and my, human failings, but when you were going through the visualization, and it might help to go back and listen to this, but I don't remember that being something that you put there. I do remember you saying that you didn't like that you were at an island and then you went up an escalator and then you were like in a modern city. So when you retold the visualization, there wasn't that element of you took control and you changed it and morphed it into something else.
no. I mean, I think it had to have happened on the subconscious level.
Uh-huh.
It still could have definitely come from just the brain.
That's so
Yeah.
interesting because I mean, going back to the mysterious, going back to the universe, going back to a higher knowing and maybe a deeper wisdom. Could it be, and I'm just putting it out there, could it be that this higher knowing, this deeper wisdom was meeting you where you were at and providing you a path of least resistance? It's just a
Yeah.
question there. Like, could it be that this the mystery or the mysterious, the the higher knowing is like, oh, okay, so Erin's a little resistant in the island. Let's give her an escalator. But she might be a little bit more accepting of that.
Yeah, like there's a level of attunement, right? Or a
Mhm.
level, but yeah, I don't know because there's so many other things wrapped up in that between and that's also, I guess, let me take a step back here because like
Mhm.
if I were to do this visualization for the first time before I started doing visualizations and coaching, I
Mhm.
probably wouldn't have gotten very far,
Mhm.
maybe in the experience. Maybe I still would have been at sea. And
Mhm.
it's not like I'm somebody who meditates, but I do like this type of kind of more active meditation, or
Mhm.
some might call this a meditation in some ways, right?
Sure.
Um, so I don't know like if it's from just the past years of like being open to a visualization like this, that it's just so easy for me to just jump in and go with it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But it's fun to go. I think there's so little risk in like opening ourselves up this way that I think it's worth it.
Mhm.
And just for my own personal experience, I think it's paid off. I don't know, LaShawn. I see this relating a lot to family constellations too,
Mhm.
and would love to know more about like in your own life, either how floating or visualizations or family constellations has had that similar aspect of helping you to float and helping you to be open to the unknown while also having a sense of purpose and like maybe you could even use the word control.
Absolutely. I really am glad that you said that because as I was reading that prompt, when I was thinking about like a vast, like a large open sea, and then the do you feel at peace, a bit lost, inspired, unsettled, something else. I was thinking that it was very similar to being in the field as a facilitator because my experience in the field is very much like being at sea. I'm in a situation where I'm facilitating a constellation that is not something that I can. It's not like I'm a director of a play. The play has been written. The play is, I haven't seen the script. I am not so much a director because a director has seen the script, the director knows they have a vision in mind, they know what they want to appear or emerge on stage, and they know what direction they want to give to the players on stage. And that's not what Family Constellations is. However, as a facilitator, there is a sense of direction. And I think that when I have seen facilitators facilitate constellations, family constellations. That is what it feels like. When you are observing the facilitator, my experience, let me just speak for myself, is this person is directing. This person knows what's going on. This person sees more than I do. This person has all the answers. They know. They've seen the script. They've studied, they know. As a facilitator, it is not that at all. As a facilitator, I feel like I'm at sea. And what I'm doing is not so much, I have in mind as a facilitator that the seeker, the client, the person who is asking for the constellation is seeking an answer to something or a resolution or healing. And I have a little interview with them. And so I have a sense. And even as I'm interviewing the person, there is a higher knowing, a deeper wisdom guiding me. So as I'm writing my notes, I get this like this voice that says, that's something. What is that? Ask about that. So I feel like I'm not so much a director as I am being directed by something I don't understand, something mysterious. And family constellations is something I think a person needs to experience to really understand what it is. Because outside of that experience, one might think, oh my gosh, this person is maybe a little off or
Yeah.
hearing voices. But if you do family constellations, you'll be like, whoa, okay, I get it, you know? And it is very much like being lost at sea. And it is like being like things revealed to you. Like I'm sitting there as a facilitator going, okay, where is this going? Where's is this going? And I'm like feeling lost. And then, as a facilitator, as someone in training, you know, my teacher is says, ask the field, be in the field, trust the field, and trust your intuition. And I think that has a lot to do with relinquishing control. So going back to what you were saying, Eryn, it is very much a dance between going with the flow, trusting the process, trusting the mysterious as it takes you to a new place, and at the same time being very aware of your own need to control or your own need to know what's going on. But when you relinquish that control and you just allow yourself to float and you allow yourself to just be open to whatever is being revealed or whatever is emerging, this new place in family constellations, which emerges in the interaction between the representatives, it is very much an experience that I could not do myself. Very similar to what you experienced, Eryn, in the visualization. Although the escalator, the jury's still out on that, whether the escalator was something you inserted or something, but the city certainly was not something you inserted. It wasn't something that was like a surprise, for you. And that's very much what happens to me in the few times I can count on one hand how many times I've facilitated. The few times that I've facilitated, what has been revealed to me is far more than I could have ever imagined if I were to
Yeah.
orchestrate it and to move the chess pieces. I would not have been able to see what is revealed if you just let the field reveal what needs to be revealed. And there's also this pull to resolve it, put a nice bow on it.
Yeah.
And the field is telling you, okay, done, go move on to the next thing, or this is where you need to go. But you're thinking, but what about that? What about that? And the field is like, we need to move on. Like it's like, and then when it plays out and it's complete, you're like, oh my gosh, I never in a million years would have figured out that that's where that needed to go. Because my logic brain is telling me you need to do it linearly. Like this makes sense to do this and this, but the field is like, there's so much more. And that could to go back to what you were saying about the core of your being is like one of who needs control, or there is that kind of arrogance or that feeling like I know what's best and I know what should happen here. And letting that go will reveal that city, at the top of the escalator that you couldn't have imagined on your own, because your logic brain wants things to be linear, and your logic brain does not have access to what that higher power, I would say, that higher knowing, that collective wisdom that
Yeah.
is so evident in family constellations.
Yeah. That feels just like that. And I know it doesn't wrap things up in a bow, but that the way you talked about family constellations, just it feels so similar to the experience I had in the visualization in terms of the opening up to the wisdom, or the wisdom of the collective, or those we as humans, right, don't have. We have, at least I feel like I'll have access points to that here and there, that greater knowing. But it's like maybe one of the lessons from today for me is learning how to open up to that more often, maybe, and resist less often, because maybe there was more of a level of resistance even in the visualization that I did that I wasn't even recognizing, which is really fascinating to me, because having gone through family constellations, not as a trainer, or not as a facilitator, but as a representative or a participant, I have felt the ethereal mystery of it all. Like it's just been really healing and helpful. And I've tried a lot of different modalities regarding my own mental health for various healing capacities, and family constellations is definitely up there in terms of opening myself up to what is available in this prompt, right? And being able to float. And I think this prompt for our readers to really kind of hone in on after they do the visualization, maybe a few times, how that relates to their way of being, and what are they seeing within themselves. Like for me, I saw a little bit of that control and resistance, but also a little bit of that me valuing spirituality and openness and those sorts of things. So what are the what is being revealed to you about who you are at a deep level and at a level of goodness too, like when we think of ourselves in that way. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to share on this floating prompt. I mean, I did swim today, so I
Yeah,
feel like I
it's
have gotten
perfect.
the metaphorical and the tangible floating. I enjoy floating.
Yeah.
So Shawn, what do you think? Do you have a call to action at this point?
I do. I want to go back to the question that's very similar to a question you would ask in Family Constellations, which is, what do you notice when you relax into the water and float with ease? And I want to bring back to the call to action that question. What do you notice about yourself and your way of being when you're in a situation where you surrender? And the floating and this prompt is really about surrender, and we touched on it in various ways. And so I really feel compelled to say, what do you notice about yourself and your way of being when you are in a state of surrender?
I love that question. It feels it feels so good to hear it aloud too. So yeah, I am sitting here and trying to really feel into um what I want to say for my call to action. And I I think, you went back to the question feeling at ease. I think I want to go to the questions before that. So as people engage with this exercise, what do you feel even after that first sentence of where it says, all we have to do is float and something will shift, close your eyes and imagine you are floating in a large open sea. And then it goes on like, do you feel at peace, a bit lost, inspired, unsettled, something else, etc. I think that can give us some information because even if we feel unsettled, what is that showing us? So I would say my call to action is to sit with the questions in this prompt as well.
Thanks for joining us for Coaching as Benevolence. I'm LaShawn with Mayshell's Sage Place, Positive Intelligence Coaching.
And I'm Eryn with Roots and Wings, Grief and Loss Coaching.
Have a benevolent day.